Before to start, let me just give you a brief intro on what this SAROA hub is. So SAROA, that is South Asia Regional Hub on Ocean Acidification. It is one of the youngest regional hub for the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network, which is an international collaboration made to design and improve our understanding on the ocean acidification and climate change research. So SAROA, as the name says, it is responsible for the South Asian seas and the ocean. And overall, the aim for SAROA and the GOA-ON, that is Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network, is to improve our understanding on the global ocean acidification conditions, to improve our understanding of ecosystem responses to ocean acidification, and to acquire and exchange data and knowledge necessary to optimize modeling for ocean acidification and its impact. So SAROA is commencing the webinar series basically to spread the awareness about the ocean acidification and promote the development of the national hubs for effective monitoring of ocean acidification and carry out capacity building activities geared toward early career researchers following the best practices led by the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network. So in the first webinar, we have the chair of the South Asia Regional Hub. So, Professor Punyasloke Bhadury is a professor in Indian Institute of Science Education Research, Kolkata, who has completed his master's from Edinburgh and PhD from Plymouth in the United Kingdom, and subsequently he did his postdoctoral research from Princeton University, USA. He joined as assistant professor in IISER Kolkata in 2009, and since 2018, he is a professor of biological sciences in IISER Kolkata. He has also established and leads the Center for Climate and Environmental Studies, an interdisciplinary center on the earth and environmental sciences with a societal relevance in IISER Kolkata. He is also leading a new interdisciplinary center, that is Center for Excellence in Blue Economy, jointly declared during the bilateral meet of Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, and His Highness President of Russian Federation, Mr. Vladimir Putin in 2021. He is a recipient of prestigious Swarn Jayanti Fellowship Award in the area of the earth and environmental sciences, conferred by Government of India in 2019. He has published more than 90 peer-reviewed papers in international journals. His research interest includes unraveling biocomplexities of organismal systems, developing new approaches to estimation of aquatic biodiversity, including by the fourth generation sequencing, biogeochemical cycling of carbon in mangroves, quantifying impacts of coastal ocean acidification and rise in sea level, as well as monitoring health of the ocean based on the automation. He is the editor mentor of Access Microbiology, editor of PeerJ, editor of Geoscience Letters, associate editor of Ecological Solutions and Evidences, associate editor of Journal of Genetics, associate editor of Frontiers in Marine Science, and many other journals of national and international repute. He has co-edited a number of special issues and currently editing a book on biogeochemistry of coastal Indian Ocean, which is to be published by Springer. He was the team leader of the Indian Arctic expedition in 2010, and he also co-chairs the Regional Advisory Committee of the Asia Oceanic Geoscience Society. As I already said, that he is a coordinator of the South Asia Regional Hub on the Ocean Acidification, SAROA, which is endorsed by GOA-ON, IOC, UNESCO, and IAEA, and part of the writing team of the United Nations Laws of the Sea.
So with this brief introduction, I would like to invite now Professor Punyasloke Bhadury for the first webinar series.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar. I particularly would like to thank you and your colleagues at the Center for Climate Change Studies in Satyabama University for hosting this webinar, and we hope to get the help from your institute, to carry on this webinar series of the SAROA, in days and months to come down. So very quickly, the main objective of today's, rather I should say discussion is to get all of us introduced to how SAROA came into existence and what the aims and visions of SAROA are, and how all of us who are here, and it's great to see a large number of joining this webinar, how you can get involved and participate in targeted activities of the SAROA and ultimately contribute to the global ocean acidification observing network, which is essentially a big coordination body, coordinating many hubs regionally and ensuring to understand the health of the ocean from the perspective of ocean acidification measurement, biology, and also societal relevance. So without any further delay, I'll very quickly go through my short presentation. I hope you can see the slides. Okay, I hope it is visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So I am representing the South Asia Regional Hub on Ocean Acidification here, and representing all the members of the existing members of the SAROA out here. And also, I happen to be working in the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research in Kolkata, which is an autonomous institute of Ministry of Education, Government of India. So South Asia is geographically and biologically very diverse. It has got a huge expanse that is influenced by regional seas and ocean, particularly the Indian Ocean. And this ensures that the South Asia is home to a large number of diverse biotopes. Many of these biotopes are rich in biodiversity, and they are considered to be the socio-cultural heritage of South Asia. For example, you've got some of the largest mangrove patches in South Asia. You've got very distinct and unique coral reefs with many endemic species being found here. You've got the largest coastal lagoon of Asia out here, or you've got very beautiful intertidal mud flats, which brings in biological, cultural, and social values. Just to give you a perspective, Sundarbans, many of you know nationally, but internationally, this is actually, excuse me, this is the largest contiguous mangrove forest located shared between India and Bangladesh. And this mangrove forest is one of the youngest mangrove forests of the world, less than 5,000 years old. And this mangrove forest has developed in presence of a continuous flow of fresh water from three major rivers of South Asia, the Ganga, Brahmaputra, and Meghna. And in this forest, you have got the swamp tiger. This is the only wetland, only mangrove in the world where you find the tiger habitat, and they are very, very unique, and they are very, very they've adapted themselves to this habitat. And thus, when this habitat is reeling under pressure from different kinds of disturbances, whether it's natural disturbances or that is anthropogenic disturbances, and in particular, when you talk about anthropogenic disturbances such as impact ocean acidification, essentially the effect of ocean acidification is ultimately going to be felt even on this charismatic fauna, the swamp tiger of the Sundarbans. Our understanding or importance of the coastal ocean in terms of the biodiversity and human health is of extreme significance. Last 5 or 10,000 years of the human civilization, if you look at it, you will see that these have evolved mostly along the rivers, estuaries, and exchanges of ideas, thoughts, culture, science, technology have happened because of the cross connectivity of the ocean, and one ocean explorer starting from one landmass and connecting to another landmass and learning. So that we cannot ignore the significance of the ocean in shaping us and our modern society. And most importantly, it is a coastal ocean, the part of the ocean system, which plays a very important role in ensuring we get the food security, the health that we want, the water security, and of course the reliable climate that we want to live in. When you talk about coastal ocean, essentially the ocean at the meeting at the boundary of the land, or the land ocean boundary system, is here you find that there is very heavy density of population. Many urban cities or towns and also many coastal communities, they kind of settle. The reason for that being that coastal ocean are rich in resources, biodiversity resources, economic resources, and socio-cultural resources. And therefore, a large population globally and including in South Asia are strongly dependent on the coastal fisheries, and their livelihood are intertwined with the dynamics of the coastal fisheries that we see. Just to give you a perspective how important coastal fisheries communities can be in South Asia, if you look at the in South Asia, you see that women and men often have multiple occupations, and fisheries is part of that multiple occupations, and essentially it constitutes a component of the diversified livelihood strategies. And fishery dependent livelihoods are considered to be very complex, very dynamic, and very adapted. And therefore, many communities which live along the coastlines in South Asia, they practice fishing as a part-time, supplementary, or even a full-time or seasonal activity. So you can clearly understand, if ocean acidification impacts are not being studied, then we'll not understand how these coastal fisheries are changing and what it would mean for the coastal fisherfolk communities of South Asia. Not only that, fishing is considered to be a part of diversified livelihood strategies for individual fishers. So essentially, if there is a diminishing coastal fisheries because of ocean acidification, you have one of the important livelihood component that goes out from the life of an individual fisher. So thus there has to be ways to come up with another alternative livelihood or sustainable livelihood. So therefore, how important translating ocean acidification research for society is paramount, and that becomes more important when you talk about South Asia. This also lays the foundation of the blue economy in South Asia. I would like to call it a sustainable blue economy. Just to give you a perspective, that 1 in 10 livelihoods globally are dependent on the fisheries, and it is estimated that the ocean economy will reach between 3 to 5 trillion US dollars by 2030. In Asia Pacific, particularly in South Asia, the contribution of the coastal fisheries or the coastal resources can vary between 1 to 30% and can go up as high as 87%. Now, therefore, the concepts of this blue economy and the blue finance are very well reflected, very clearly mentioned in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, essentially all the UN SDG goals, which are interconnected. And therefore, the life under sea, life under water, rather, I should say, that is very important to understand, because ocean acidification will affect the life under ocean, and that would essentially affect the blue economy, and which will have implications of blue finance and down the line. Coastal countries of South Asia are very dependent on the fish proteins. Why? Because we have a huge population and we have an aspiring population. Therefore, ensuring the sustainability of the coastal fishery resources are very, very critical. We cannot look aside that there are significant changes in the global surface temperature. You look at the 6th assessment report of the Working Group 1 of IPCC that came out recently, you will see that our Earth is warming in an unprecedented scale in more than 2000 years, and therefore this has been a huge attention or huge point of discussion in the last COP 26, which was held in Glasgow, and also in the UN Ocean Conference, which was recently concluded in Portugal, and also has been very heavily discussed in a number of international diaspora in over the years, including in G20 and G7 platforms. I wanted to give a perspective. What we are looking at or steering at? The CO2 concentration is highest in at least 2 million years. You've got the fastest rate of sea level rise is happening in the last 1,000 years. You've got the Arctic sea ice, which is at its lowest level in last 1,000 years, and the glaciers have retreated in an unprecedented scale. Now, the irony is all of these are not happening isolated. They are all happening together. So essentially, this is called like a concussion of multiple factors working together on the coastal ocean. So this is called a multiple stressor environment, or multiple stressors that are acting on the coastal environment. And thus, that is causing serious issue to the health of the ocean and to the sustainability of the ocean. Putting aside this, we should not forget that in the last few years in particular, the CO2 emission has been at its highest. So we are unable to tackle the use of fossil fuel although there are significant achievements or significant improvements are made in terms of renewable energy, I think there are massive commitments are coming out from countries such as India and China. India in particular is leading the International Solar Alliance, committing how important it is, looking forward and ensuring that it stands to this 2-degree commitments. It is also committing to the national determined contribution NDC commitments. So I think there are a lot of developments happening, but I think we need to do much more to be able to tackle this more extensively. And the net result of is, out of many things that is going on, is you've got a situation where the oceans, the acidification of the ocean is happening, and it is happening at an unprecedented scale in the Earth's history. If you look at the Paleocene thermal maxima, you will see this event has happened, but actually in the last 200 years of human activity, this has become unprecedented, and the net result is that we are staring at a situation where the changes in the ocean pH is going to affect the biological community structure, ecosystem processes, and ecosystem services. Now, the biggest problem that we have is there are lack of coordinated long-term data on ocean acidification across South Asia. And you can see on the top right-hand side, this blue color indicates essentially there is where the data sets are not very prominent. We don't know much about it. Not only that, as I told to you that there are so many unique habitats or biotopes are there, we don't understand what would be the response at the habitat level as a result of acidification of the coastal ocean. And we must not forget that if the microbial communities, for example, the diatom population, their structure changes, then definitely that's going to have an effect on the coastal fisheries, the fish population, and beyond. So 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 obviously this is something which we need to understand very well. We need to document, and we need to have a extremely well coordinated program that has to happen across all the countries of South Asia. Now, one of the ways to tackle or to understand these changes as a result of the ocean acidification is having a time series. The beauty of time series is it is essentially a snapshot that tells us about the physical, chemical, and biological processes that is happening at regular and at long-term scales. And you can go back and figure out what has happened, let's say 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago, or even 100 years ago. So such time series are very clearly evident in many many oceanic regions. Unfortunately, in South Asia, we do not have such kind of time series. The beauty is if we are able to have such extensive time series where we are able to integrate the carbonate chemistry measurements that can tell us about the health of the ocean from the ocean acidification perspective, then what will end up is trying to understand how the changes that are happening, how those are driving the biodiversity, the ecosystem processes, and then what it would mean for the blue economy, among others. Most importantly, we must not forget that many of the key biochemical processes, for example, carbon cycling, which we talk about in South Asia always. If you open newspaper, you will see blue carbon, mangroves, Y-shoot plantation. Essentially, you are talking about carbon cycling. This carbon cycling is crucial because carbon cycling controls the aerosol formation, and aerosol controls the monsoonal pattern. So that is regional and global climatic processes are very strongly controlled by carbon cycling. Now, if you look at it, as I said to you before, globally, there are a large number of these time series are there. I think it's a big list is there. I have just kind of put out a couple of them, such as the Pacific Ocean. There are some time series are there. You've got Atlantic Ocean time series. European seas have time series. Very famous of them are, for example, the Hot time series, the Western Channel Observatory, the CPR. These are very well known, has been running for 100, almost more than 100 years. Of course, CPR is more than 100 years now. European seas have many time series, and Indian Ocean only has one time series. If I now look at the coastal ocean time series in South Asia, unfortunately, we don't have any such time series. I think our number of time series are very limited. Even we say those are time series, essentially these are seasonal sampling activities, So we also need to augment the time series program, initiate new time series program that can tell us the robust changes that might be happening in the coastal water of South Asia, and that can supplement or complement the data that we get by measuring the changing carbonate chemistry as part of the ocean acidification measurement. I very quickly wanted to give you one example how really the time series can help. And this is in Sundarbans Mangrove. We set up a time series site way back in 2010. This is again the only mangrove time series site of South Asia. You know that Sundarban is very unique, as I said to you. It has got a freshwater flow that can vary from 42,000 cubic meter per second to 120,000 cubic meter per second, mainly in the western part of the Sundarbans. And it has got very high suspended particulate matter, probably the second highest in the world. So light is not much penetrating, yet you've got very high primary productivity in the estuarine water, and you've got very high fisheries, coastal fisheries. So thus the importance of Sundarbans is globally well known. It's considered as a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a Ramsar site. We have a time series program, as I was mentioning, the Sundarbans Biological Observatory time series program. We set it up in 2010. We have been measuring on a weekly basis, on a bi-monthly basis, on a monthly basis, depending upon the kind of questions that we want to answer. And this has been a continuous process, which is ongoing. And we strongly believe that if we are to have national OA monitoring programs, that means the ocean acidification monitoring programs for many of the countries, if not all the countries in South Asia, we need to have also in parallel time series program that will be crucial. Because understanding the complexity of biological entities and decoding the ecosystem level processes requires more number of measurements, and just carbonate chemistry measurements would not be adequate. Not only that, from a global perspective, these data would be very important. It can contribute to the SDG 14.3.1, and that is very important because that tells us to understand or helps us to forecast how the health of the global ocean, the coastal ocean, is going to be in the next 50 to 100 years. Besides that, our understanding of the ocean acidification effects on many critical processes. For example, I was telling you carbon cycling in mangroves. We really do not know. We don't have any data. We don't have very coordinated measurements. So just to give you an example, in mangroves, you've got so much mangrove litter fall that is falling. For example, in Sundarbans, these litter fall can be happening 4 to 6 times in a year. Now, what is the fate of these litter fall? These are being broken down by very specialized group of bacteria. Here you can see Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes. And this is one work that we published this year, which came out in Environmental Science and Pollution Research. You can read it, how the tannic acid breakdown in mangroves are being taken place, are undertaken. Now the question is, if there is a change in pH, and then what is going to be the effect on these specialized bacterial communities, and then what's going to be the effect on the loop, and ultimately how that is going to transfer in terms of the energy level or the trophic wave, food wave, and what's going to be the effect on the coastal fisheries. You can clearly see how fundamental science ultimately affect the society, and therefore we need to look at it very well. The second thing that I wanted to highlight is, if you look at it, how even seasonal time series can be important. This is one example we have from the Sundarbans. Here, what we have got 250 stations that we have been monitoring in Sundarbans, and again, these are seasonal time series site. What we see out here is, if you look out here in this graph, this is a salinity graph. You see the salinity is falling down dramatically during the summertime. When summertime, actually the salinity should increase. The reason that is happening is because there is groundwater discharge is happening. So seepage of groundwater is happening, and that is augmenting, or that is resulting in growth of unique microbial communities that are doing very critical functions, which is very important ultimately in terms of maintaining the nutrient stoichiometry and the ecological stoichiometry. So here is one example. You see on the left hand side those communities which are essentially coming from fresh water, and they are carrying on these critical processes. So we will not understand, if we don't measure the carbonate chemistry of these coastal areas in South Asia, we will not understand what is going to be the impact. So that means if we miss them, what's going to happen in the long term? Are these going to be important at all or not? So quantifying the responses at the biological scale would be very, very important. Now, one thing we must not forget, that the ocean, the coastal ocean in South Asia it's undergoing a massive change. We call it as an urban ocean. That means the ocean is becoming more urbanized, or the effect of the urban activities are being faced on the coastal ocean or on the health of coastal ocean. So so just to give you an example here, the if you look in the Bay of Bengal of the Northern Indian Ocean, you will see that it is becoming much more rich in nitrogen. So essentially the stoichiometry is really pushing in one direction, and that's going to have an effect on the overall ecological stoichiometry. Essentially you'll end up with a heterotrophic microbial bloom, that is bacterial bloom. But then the question is, if there is adding to this the effect of the changing carbonate chemistry as a result of the ocean acidification, how that is going to accelerate the process. Are there going to be some opportunists? Are there going to be some winners? These are the kind of questions that we need to answer in parallel when we carry on these measurements. So therefore it is very complex. We are looking at this loop, microbial loop, but we don't really understand how the effects of this loop works out in case of coastal biotopes, and many of these biotopes are very diverse in South Asia. At the moment, we know that for measuring of the carbonate chemistry of the ocean, there are several ways to do it. You can use different kinds of techniques. You can measure pH, total alkalinity, DIC, and you can calculate the PCO2. You can of course measure the PCO2. You can calculate the aragonite saturation rate. You can use very high precision instruments, or you can use very simple instruments such as the potentiometric method, or you can also take into account other attributes or parameters such as salinity, surface water temperature, dissolved nutrients, dissolved inorganic nitrogen, or orthophosphate, and then you can calculate using a very robust tool, the CO2 sys, and you can say that how the carbonate chemistry of the ocean is looking like. Now the question is, some of these are achievable and some of these require resources. Essentially we need investment, and these investments are very critical across the South Asian countries to have an effective national programs that can run it. Now, to be able to do these measurements, we also need is what is called a building of the capacity. We must not forget that this kind of measurements requires a lot of precision, and reference material is very, very important. Certified reference material, CRM, is very important in this case, and these are not easy to get it, very expensive also in some cases for many of the resource limited countries in South Asia. You need inter-laboratory calibration, and of course, IAEA is an organization that plays a very important role in this process, where we can get the help in doing these measurements. So just to give an example, you can have collected a coastal water sample, let's say you measured in Chennai, and then you send the same samples to us here in Kolkata. We measure it, and we do the inter-laboratory calibration to understand how robust is our measurement and what is the error. So therefore reliability of data is going to be a very, very important thing when we start effective national OA monitoring programs. Hardly there are studies out there. There are only few studies out there that shows the effects of OA on microbial communities. Here is one example where what we are doing at the moment is we're looking how diatoms would respond to ocean acidification scenarios. And I'm not talking about the open ocean acidification, but more the coastal ocean acidification scenario. We see there will be opportunities which will dominate the system, and we do not understand how this is going to be reflected in terms of the higher trophic levels. So for example, thalassiosera population is going to be dominant. We'll have a lot of opportunistic green algae which are going to grow very fast. So what it would mean in terms of the fisheries or in terms of the blue economy, we need to understand. So here the integration of the chemical and biological measurements would be very, very important. And why that is important is, unless and until we do these kind of targeted measurements which can address societal issues. For example, here blue economy is one example. You will not understand if the diatoms are changing, then what it would mean for the gray mullet population. And if the gray mullet population changes, then this fisher folk who is supplying the gray mullet to us on our platter, he or she will lose the livelihood. So there is a strong societal angle that needs to be addressed. So overall, if we look at it in terms of the challenges, the challenges can be in terms of the accuracy, precision, routines for quality control, response time, compatibility, use and maintenance. So I'm mostly talking in terms of chemical and biological measurements, but the most important is the building of capacity. I think building of capacity in South Asia in this area would be very, very important. Chemical measurements of OA, biological measurements of OA. And I wanted to highlight how global ocean acidification observing network, essentially an umbrella of scientists and countries which have come down, and they are doing coordinated measurements of ocean acidification across the seas and ocean global scale. The idea of GOA-ON is to essentially build capacity through direct mentorship, training courses, provide kit that gives a reliable measurement of carbonate chemistry of the ocean, develop effective ways of communication, take science to society. Not only that, GOA-ON shapes and influences a huge number of actions. You see in the last 2 or 3 years, in the ocean community, the importance of ocean acidification has become such a big thing. And you look at the last COP26 in Glasgow or the ocean conference, the importance of ocean acidification has taken a center stage. So GOA-ON plays a very important role. It is heavily involved in developing the SDG 14.3.1 methodology, including submission of the data, community of ocean action and ocean acidification, supports regional hubs, and it supports or it facilitates workshops that can identify needs and action along with partner organizations, which are being pointed out here. So under the GOA-ON umbrella, you have got many regional hubs, and among them, the youngest of the hub is the South Asia Regional Hub on Ocean Acidification. I wanted to let you know that this collaborative international network of members are represented by more than 100 countries and so many territories globally, and it connects all the geographical entities, or it's only one or two places where the hubs are geographical locations where the hubs are not present, but I believe these will be up and running very soon. So South Asia Regional Hub on Ocean Acidification is the youngest among all of these hubs. Essentially, the genesis of the SAROA hub started way back in 2013. You can see out here, we had a lot of colleagues from GOA-ON, Professor Stephen Widdecombe from Plymouth Marine Laboratory, who is the co-chair of the GOA-ON, Professor Richard Bellerby from Norwegian Water Institute, and also from the East China Normal University, then Baden Russell from University of Hong Kong, Tyagarajan from University of Hong Kong, and many other colleagues came down, and we started the ocean acidification workshop in 2013. Then in 2016, we had a targeted course which is supported by Government of India, which is an ocean acidification course that ran for 1 week, theory on ocean acidification. Richard Bellerby came down, stayed in ISAR Kolkata. It was run under the umbrella of the Global Initiation for Academic Network GAN program. And 2020, we had another round of meeting where a lot of scientists, policymakers, practitioners came down and to ISAR Kolkata. We had the meeting, and that ultimately laid the final shaping of the South Asia Regional Hub on Ocean Acidification. The hub office at the moment is hosted in my institute, the Indian Institute of Science, Education, Research in Kolkata, and the hub is very strongly supported intellectually, financially, and in every other way by the GOA-ON Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network, ISAR Kolkata, International Atomic Energy Agency, the IOC, UNESCO, among others. So SAROA also has the acronym SAROA also has a huge significance. SAROA stands for SWAN, and SWAN can connect from one geographical location to another geographical location. So the SAROA hub also intends to connect the South Asian countries to address one of the biggest problems, which is the ocean acidification. So SAROA intends also to work very actively with the policymakers in the region. Right now, we have a steering committee. The steering committee is represented by members from different countries. And also, we have a very strong ECR, early career scientists and early career researchers driven members. Our membership is expanding. It's crossed more than 80 at the moment, and I'm very sure that many of you who are attending out here would get actively involved with the activities of the SAROA. Over the last 9 or 10 months, SAROA has been very actively promoting itself. We have presented in the Solar Southeast Asia workshop We have tied up with Observer Research Foundation, one of the biggest think tanks in South Asia working on blue economy. We have conducted several workshops, outreach. We are presenting heavily in the upcoming American Geophysical Union meeting, which is happening in Chicago. Also, we are also connecting with regional scales. For example, a big meeting which is coming up at the end of October in Bangladesh, where we are going to be very heavily involved and trying to motivate ECers to join in these activities. I wanted to highlight how important the ECers are. We have got 3 excellent ECR scientists who are shaping the SAROA hub. We have got Dr. Anesha Ghosh from India, Dr. Indunil Senanayake from Sri Lanka, and Dr. Amit Kumar from India. They are driving the ECR membership, they are driving the ECR participation. And not only that, they are also playing a very important role in ensuring that the ECers from SAROA hub engages very effectively with other regional hubs of the GOA-ON and beyond, such as the ECOP, the early career ocean professionals. The ECRs of the ECR members, the steering committee members, they are starting the SAROA newsletter, and of course, this webinar series is one of their activities. You can follow the activity of the hub through by browsing the social media platforms such as the Facebook. You've got a dedicated Twitter handle, the SAROA hub handle, and we have got a mailing list. Very soon you are going to get timely updates. And we are also hoping next year there's going to be a very targeted training workshop looking at the chemical and biological aspects of ocean acidification, which will be hosted by SAROA and supported by a number of international agencies. Over the last 8 or 9 months, we have very actively engaged within the region across South Asia. We are engaging very heavily with the SACEP, the South Asia Cooperative Environment Program of the SARC. We are also developing or framing up ways to involve the coastal communities in OA monitoring. I think citizen science in OA monitoring is going to be very, very critical. And here are a couple of examples how we are engaging. India also has a number of capacity building fellowships, for example, India Science Research Fellowship. So SAROA Hub would be very happy to support ISRF applications. And if anybody is interested to work on chemical and biological measurements of OA in India, then we would be very happy to support these applications. So essentially, other South Asian countries can come down, members from other South Asian countries can participate. We are involved with the OARS Ocean Decade program. I'm going to talk about that, where we are hoping to integrate the local knowledge and the local issues. And last but not the least, in South Asia, blue economy is very important, and essentially blue finance is very critical. Unless and until we have a very robust financing, and this can be only possible when we integrate OA into existing policies, then only we'll be able to have very effective OA monitoring programs, address local, regional, and global problems. And that brings the foundation of the ocean acidification research for sustainability, the OARS program. This is endorsed by the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. It intends to build on the work of the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network, efforts of the broader ocean acidification community, and harness the already established GOA-ON network of regional hubs. Some of you might be knowing, very recently there was the symposium of the OA scientists, policymakers, and community members. It happened in Lima in Peru, where all of the OA practitioners at different scales, they came down and they met and they discussed. So OARS is going to be a big thing. It's a game-changing thing, and there are several outcomes of the OARS are there. There are 7 decade action outcomes are there. You can look at this latest paper that has come down by Dobson et al. 2022, just came out I think last week. It has come out in ICA's Journal of Marine Science, where you can have a very detailed understanding, and you can identify the activities where you can get involved, communicate to the SAROA hub, and then SAROA hub is going to communicate and bring in the connectivity. I must say that the importance of the ocean acidification cannot be undermined. In the last meeting last year of the COP26 in Glasgow, we had a discussion in the virtual ocean pavilion about on a number of issues, including on ocean acidification, how ocean acidification can affect the livelihood of communities, mitigation strategies, sustainable livelihood. So there is a huge attention globally on this, and to have more effective OA measurements, or to integrate the broader outcome of the OA into policy level, we need to do automation and sensor development. This is something which we are very actively involved, where we are developing cost-effective sensors to measure key parameters of ocean health, such as salinity, pH, and we are deploying them. For example, here in this case, we have deployed them in Sundarbans, and we are getting those data. These can help us to better understand the health of the ocean, along with the robust carbonate chemistry and the biological based measurements of ocean acidification. Last but not the least, I wanted to highlight that the problem of microplastic is huge, paramount. There's no need to say about it, but I think what's going to be the impact in terms of the carbon dynamics needs to be very not very clearly understood. We know that the annual flow of plastic carbon into the global carbon cycle is roughly between 280 to 360 million metric tons. So essentially, this is another critical anthropogenic stressor that can possibly amplify OA and impacts of OA on biological communities and also on processes. So this is another area where we need to really focus very effectively. So why do we need the SAROA? Why do we need GOA-ON to have the SAROA? And why all of us are here today in this webinar? The reason is we humans benefit more from marine resources, and therefore ocean management has to be very successfully integrated. And to be able to do that, we need to have robust measurements that needs to be implemented across South Asia and beyond. And then we can use these information, contribute to the global data pool to have a better understanding of the global health. I request all of you to join in this endeavor along with my colleagues of the SAROA members, the steering committee members of the SAROA Hub, and please see the resources of the GOA-ON and the OARS program and see how you can get very actively involved. And thank you all so much for very patiently listening, and we'll be happy to take any question or any point that you want to highlight now. Thank you so much.